So it is Thursday, February 20th. This is Chris, and I'm going to walk through in this call some stuff that happened on February 11th, which was some testimony before the House Finance Committee, of which Representative Brian Stewart is the chair, about the Ohio Elections Commission. Just by way of background, the Ohio Elections Commission is supposed to be the watchdog over proper and legal campaign finance within Ohio when it comes to election matters. In that regard, it's potentially a little better than the Ethics Commission as the watchdog over ethics, but it is a lapdog to the establishment, and it basically does the bidding of insiders. So, in the Ohio Election Commission, a lot of the cases that come up, well, let me jump back. It's what would be called a quasi judicial body. And what that means, it's not a court, but it has a function in determining whether things were done properly or not. There are a lot of quasi judicial bodies, like the Board of Tax Appeals, um, the and boards of elections can be a quasi can have hearings. Boards of revision can have hearings. There's all kind of things that have hearings and adjudicate things that are not in actual courts, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. They deal with special areas, but then usually there's some appeal process through the court system. So that's what the Ohio Election Commission gets referred cases by local boards of election is one way. Second way could be by the Secretary of State, and a third way is by everyday citizens like you and me could refer a case to the Ohio Election Commission. They are mostly structured to deal with the routine Board of Election stuff, which are things like you didn't file a report when you were supposed to, something was wrong with your report, little things. That's probably, I don't know, it might be said in this video I'm going to play, but that's probably 80% of their workload is that kind of stuff. They deal with them in these things called preliminary reviews, where you, the accused, basically have no rights within them, and they just mass adjudicate. Typically maybe 100 cases every session, where everybody gets a $50 fine, or everybody gets, what have you. If you show up, then you can talk, but largely they're going to just have a certain fine. So that's the vast majority of what they do. Okay. When it comes to big cases, the two things I've noticed is big cases that say come from the AG or comes from some lawyer or law firm tend to be political cases. So those cases um, tend to target certain people. When it's citizens like you or me bring a case, I think that's very rare. And I have a track record of bringing cases that have resulted in hearings, and those hearings will go on for a certain period of time. And the cases that I've been involved with that involve hearings are all involving Larry Householder crooked candidates that during the 2020 primary basically knowingly took illegal corporate contributions from Larry Householder bribe money into their campaigns, or as in-kind contributions through work being done for their campaigns. And the three of those candidates are Alan Freeman, Gene Schmidt, and Representative Brian Stewart. So those are the three. So I've brought those kind of cases and been so far 100% successful in them. What you will find is that those people, let's use Representative Schmidt and Representative Stewart, they typically are not going to ever be held accountable by like the Secretary of State. They're protected. So if you know, in Ohio it was one time said in the Larry Householder scheme that we're the most corrupt political state in the country, and I believe it's true. I hope it's true. I can't believe somebody be more corrupt than we are. Insiders are protected. Brian Stewart's an insider. Gene Schmidt's an insider. Alan Freeman's not an insider. He's a schlub, but he was part of the insider team when his stuff took place. So before I start getting into the video, and I've given a little bit of a background, it's good to have a context on how corrupt Ohio is. So if you remember, Larry Householder's bribe scheme was $61 million of bribe money that was used for expenditures through a thing called Growth and Opportunity PAC, for which he's in jail for, where the candidates, they all knew, Gene Schmidt, Alan Freeman, they all knew what was going on. They play dumb now because they can get away with it in Ohio, with dark money spend demonizing anybody that was running against them that wasn't part of the chosen Larry Householder team. But in addition to that, they were also funneling money and resources and into the individual campaigns and doing things like, for example, in the case of Alan Freeman, he had $290,000 of spend take place on TV, radio, and in mailers that was never reported anywhere, that was under his own disclaimer, whatever it was, Committee to Elect Alan Freeman or Friends of Alan Freeman. And so that type of behavior, that crooked campaign finance behavior, actually takes place in Ohio all the time. It is a regular feature of Ohio politics. It's why grassroots candidates can almost never be successful, because the insiders have this secret operation that supports their campaigns that never gets reported on any campaign finance report. What Larry Householder did is he flew a little bit too close to the sun, because the $61 million was so much. Would you ever see Dave Yost get involved proactively on this at our AG? No, he protects people, just like he did with ECOT. He protects the contributor base that does crooked stuff. Would you see the Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, get in this stuff and really mix it up? No, not at all. They don't do that. They protect insiders. What do you see them do? They go after people like Joe Blystone. So Joe Blystone's campaign finance was wrong. It was messed up. It was bad. Okay. But so there's no excuse for it. But he got targeted. I think he ended up paying like $138,000 or something, because he's not an insider. Had he been an insider kissing Mike DeWine's, you know what? Nothing would ever happen to Joe Blystone. It only happens to insiders. So when I've brought cases, they have been against insiders. And those cases have resulted in findings of violations. The Alan Freeman one, he was given a $50,000 fine. He appealed it through the court system and was then ultimately declined at the Supreme Court level, that he had been unfairly treated and he wasn't guilty, which was ridiculous. He's never admitted or taken responsibility for his illegal actions. But that case was actually, just to give you a flavor, the election commission, I just said, well, they protect people. I've said they protect people. You might be saying, okay, well, then why did he get a $50,000 fine? The fine was a cover-up. Alan Freeman should have been referred for criminal prosecution for accepting corporate contributions illegally, and he should be in jail. He'd be out by now, maybe, because I think they limit is 1 year. He should have been in jail for what he did. But instead, he just got a $50,000 fine. The fine was actually, to me, a cover-up. There should have been more. And we've got Jean Schmidt. She only got a $50 fine. Jean is a little more crooked, crafty than Alan, though. She kept changing her campaign finance reports and stuff while our hearings were going on. And now we have Representative Brian Stewart. And that's why this came to my attention. So Mark Paquita is the one who alerted me to this hearing and that there was an article about it. And you have two people on the Finance Committee of the House, Brian Stewart and Jean Schmidt. Both Jean Schmidt's case has already been adjudicated before the Ohio Election Commission. Householder finance crook Jean Schmidt. And you have Brian Stewart, who currently has a case right now. He never, frankly, I don't know. I don't think the guy has hardly any ethics. You would have thunk maybe he would have recused himself as the chair when he has a case before the person who's being questioned. But we're going to see what happens. And I'm going to show you a tweet of Brian Stewart after this, which I think is disgraceful behavior for a elected representative who has a case, who won't admit he's guilty as hell, by the way, that is also a lawyer. He's clearly threatening the election commission. And you'll see that when I show the tweet at the end. He's clearly threatening the election commission to, as he says, buckle up, because you have a case of mine before you and I'm crooked as hell. And you might want to remember that you're asking for things. So the video I'm going to play, I'm going to try as much as I can to not keep interrupting, but it's hard sometimes because I want to throw things in. I've put the video out just raw. It is the time for the hearing. It was about 42 minutes. I sped it up a little bit. So when you first hear it, you'll have to get used to it. It's a little speedier, but it's the whole part. The video itself is about 35 minutes. I put the video out separately on YouTube so you can watch the video without me yapping. but I thought this was a good approach that I wanted to be able to make some comments because these people are so full of crap that are on these people in office. And and we'll see, and I'll comment on some of them as we go through here. But I'm going to go ahead and play the video of what's said during this this House Finance Committee hearing. And the person being questioned is this Phil Richter, who is the head of the Ohio Election Commission, the executive director or the staff attorney. There's going to be a lot of talk in here about the false statements, because that's what these politicians want to talk about, not campaign finance crookery. And so you're going to hear a lot of talk about that. Very little talk about campaign finance issues, and absolutely no talk whatsoever about the fact that you have a campaign finance situation in Ohio that is out of control with crooks like Larry Householder, and there's nothing really that's been done in the legislature or in the commission, the election commission, to try to tighten up at all on campaign finance in Ohio from the crooked things. You'd think these guys would be embarrassed by Larry Householder. They're actually proud of Larry Householder. And frankly, everybody that worked with Larry Householder got promoted. And that can be for another thing. Larry Householder's in jail, all these other people, and there's a few people high up, Matt Borges and so forth, but all the lieutenants got promoted, including Stephen Caraway, who's 2 counties over from Claremont, lives in Adams County. All right, let me play the video and see if I can try to avoid interrupting too much.
Our first witness will be Executive Director Phil Richter of the Ohio Elections Commission. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Chairman Stewart and members of the House Finance Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and address the commission today, or the committee today, on behalf of the Ohio Elections Commission. The commission has operated as an independent agency for almost 30 years now, since January 1 of 1996. It is comprised of 7 members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 1 person who is unaffiliated. And as well, there are 3 now alternate members that the commission has available to it. The commission staff, along with myself, is 1 full-time assistant and 1 part-time assistant that essentially tries to do the work of the commission, and I think it does so very efficiently and effectively. I'm speaking on behalf of the budget today because while this budget does provide the commission with, I think, a substantial increase, it will allow the commission to cover the expenses. We have run into some expenses over the last couple of years that were not unexpected in terms of challenges to the statutory scheme of the state of Ohio, for which the commission is obligated to defend, and the Attorney General's office has been obligated to get outside counsel that the commission must pay for. In addition, I look forward to updating the commission's record keeping by using a more electronic version that the commission has not previously had available to it. In addition, the commission's total budget, about 80%, is comprised of payroll. Historically, the commission has operated, I think, very efficiently with the monies provided by the General Assembly and upon recommendation from the Office of Budget Management. And so I think the commission does a very good job of dealing effectively and efficiently with the funds provided to it. You all have my testimony. I don't want to bore you with going over anything else there. And so I'll just open myself up to questions if there are any other questions that the committee may have. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the commission or the committee.
Member questions. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Richter, Director Richter. I have a couple of questions. One is the commission members themselves. This is basically a quasi-judicial system.
Her questions are going to mostly be related not to their budget, but to that the members of the commission haven't been properly trained to know that they're supposed to let people like her off the hook better than they do. So let's keep going.
But it appears, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
That some members may not understand the boundaries of the law when they are acting as commissioners. How well schooled are they when they are sitting in that position? In other words, do you train them? Do you tell them where the boundaries are, et cetera?
I do my Chairman Stewart, Representative Schmidt. I do my best to pass along information to the commission members concerning what the statutes are. Before every meeting, I give them an outline of what's to be addressed that day that provides the complainants, the response, the issues that are pending before it, and the application of the law. And I certainly address with them, I believe, what is the appropriate approach to take on any issue that's presented to the commission. Yes.
So what he means by that is that when he gives them this special agenda that's not on the podium for the public, it actually tells them how to vote on issues. So he tells them what he thinks the law is supposed to be, and tells them how to vote. This is, remember, in America, we have a thing called a jury. You know, apparently Gene Schmidt would be against a jury because they haven't been properly trained to be able to render the kind of verdicts that insider crooks like Gene Schmidt want to have rendered.
There are some commission members that I think do a lengthy approach toward reviewing materials and the information that I give them prior to a commission meeting and go into great detail. I engage in conversation with them all the time as it relates to what statutory provisions are and how they could apply. So I feel like, currently there's only one other, no, I think there are two attorneys on the commission. And so I do my best to educate all of the commission members, even the attorneys, as to how I believe campaign finance law should be applied and how it applies to each case.
Follow up.
Through the chair. Thank you. Thank you, sir. It appears, sir, that some of the commission members may not understand completely.
How does it appear this? And to who does it appear this? Gene Schmidt is as crooked as they come. And she's just upset because she should have gotten like a $10,000, $20,000 fine. She got a $50 fine because just the way she behaved in her hearing. But she's still got an axe to grind because it's Gene Schmidt. She's not supposed to be guilty of anything ever. She's like a saint on earth.
Their role. And they may be looking at situations that legally would take you in a different direction. My concern is that the commission members, once they are appointed, don't have some sort of an education process that they would go through before they sit to make a decision that affects people.
Chairman Stewart, Representative Schmidt. I think it's fair to say, and I appreciate your question, don't get me wrong. I think it's fair to say that the commission members generally have an understanding of the political arena, considering that the partisan members are all approved by the general, or their names are forwarded to the governor by the General Assembly. And so they have an understanding of how the system works and how it properly should be applied. Certainly, there can always be questions, I think, and reasonable questions as to the approach the commission members take. But I feel like I do my best to give them the information that they need to understand what the issues are and make a proper statutory decision.
Follow up.
Thank you, sir. In your testimony, or on the website, I should say, you say that the OEC process is expedited. And yet, there are multiple committees over the last several years who have been required to attend hearings, and that the decisions go into a year, 2 years, delay before a decision is rendered. Sir, that costs people time. It also costs people money. And when you say it's an expedited process, I know that in a court of law, they wouldn't tolerate that kind of lengthy time to hear a case and then to render a decision. And yet the OEC has not on one occasion, but on very many occasions, taken what I think is way too long of a time to hear a case and to render a decision.
I think they take too long to hear cases and render decisions. But this is complete bullshit. That happens because of people like Gene Schmidt. If we go look at her hearings, she always has some schedule conflict. She's an important state rep and can't be there on a certain day. There was a time when they tried to get it done we had pre-agreed to do 2 days in a row. Typically, just to give a frame of reference here, typically the hearings that I have been involved with will take maybe 3 or 4 actual hearing sessions. Those might be 3 or 4 hours each. So let's take that, you can multiply that out. they tried with her. We had pre-agreed that we were going to meet 2 days in a row. I booked a hotel in Columbus, and then at the end of day one, she announced she couldn't come on day two. So that caused it to get stretched out like another month and a half. The political class, generally speaking, likes it to stretch out because they never then get found guilty, and everybody either forgets or they literally pass away. And I don't want to sound bad, but her husband was her treasurer and he literally died. So that then the treasurer wasn't available to be questioned ever. He never testified. So it's all bullshit. It's completely disingenuous. Does it take too long? Yes. I've had to file 2 mandamus actions to get things scheduled at the Ohio Election Commission. But the reason why, a big part of the reason it takes too long is because of this. I think they largely cover for people like Gene Schmidt. The other thing is that they don't have consecutive days of hearings. So they don't go just say, like, we're going to have the Gene Schmidt case. It's going to start on Tuesday and we're going to book Tuesday, Wednesday. That's what a court does. A court does that. So they're not really geared on the Ohio Election Commission to meet to have hearings that are going to take even, 20 total hours, because they do it across months because they only meet once or twice a month. And that's probably what needs to be changed. But they would need more money to do that. They would need a different compensation model for the commission members to do that. She could control that. She's on the finance committee, but she's not interested in a election commission that's effective and works well. She's interested in an election commission that protects swamp creatures like her. Let's keep rolling.
I think, Chairman Stewart, Representative Schmidt, your concerns are certainly fair, and I understand it considering what you've gone through and as well as what Chairman Stewart is currently going through.
Buckle up.
I understand.
There's Stewart's buckle up comment. So the funny part is he's making allusions to him, Richter, but neither of these pieces of Schmidt or Stewart have acknowledged before they start asking questions that they both have campaign finance issues relating to them being Larry Householder bribe-oriented candidates. So that he kind of alludes to it. And when he alludes to Stewart's case, what does Stewart say? Buckle up. That's a Freudian threat. That is a threat. Brian Stewart is a little man in every regard. And he's trying to threaten the Ohio Election Commission. And when you see the tweet he put out at the end, you'll really get how he's trying to threaten them. You better find him innocent, guys, or he's going to shut down your whole commission.
But part of the reason why it took that long was obviously you're aware, there's a series of cases that were all brought by one particular gentleman that all essentially involved the same circumstances. And the first case that the commission decided involving then candidate Alan Freeman was appealed. And once it started in the court system, the appeal process, there was the possibility that the commission's decision in that case, which directly impacted yours and directly impacts the status of your case, if the court decision had been different, it would have changed our approach on dealing with your case. And so I couldn't bring your case forward. I couldn't bring your case forward or the other ones that are pending as it relates to where it goes from there. The courts upheld the commission's decision all the way through the 10th District Court of Appeals. That took about 2 years for it to get through the court system. Then it was appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court essentially rejected it, upholding the 10th District Court decision. Then I was able to go forward with your case, but I didn't want to start the case against Representative Stewart until your case was done.
Follow up.
I hate to disagree with you, sir, but my case was heard in tandem, and my case had nothing to do with the other case. We don't need to comment anymore.
Okay, you got to love that. We don't need to comment anymore. My case was, anybody that lives in Claremont County knows that Gene Schmidt and Alan Freeman campaigns were symbiotic with the corrupt Larry Householder stuff. They did ad buys together. Their commercials appeared together. The difference is Gene Schmidt did claim on her campaign finance reports some of the crooked Larry Householder money, and then she paid some bills to try to avoid any liability, but she left stuff on the table. So it was different. Gene is a more crafty politician. She tries to cover her trail. Alan Freeman is a schlub who just stares right in the face. Alan Freeman could be watching himself on a video with a policeman robbing a store that's clearly him and be denying that it was him. So Gene was cleaner, but the cases were intertwined. What Gene did, they were both householder candidates in the same election at the same time in Claremont County, and a lot of their activities were symbiotic because the two districts are right next to each other.
But the decisions that were rendered in the Freeman case happened during my case. Thank you.
Representative Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for being here today. I was really excited, expecting to hear a little more about the Ohio Elections Commission, but I guess we can read the testimony. My question is really budgetary in nature. Just looking at your budget for 2025 to 2026, there looks to be about a 36% increase, and then 27, an additional 12%. Can you speak to what that increase is for?
I slightly did during my testimony, but part of it is the commission has been obligated to get outside counsel to defend it in certain matters that are pending in the court system. Then also we're planning on installing a new record retention system essentially for the commission. And then I guess the last thing is, and depending on how you want to approach it, it's certainly, I have a variety of people talking to me about it. I plan on retiring at some point during this biennium and bringing in a replacement for myself in the intervening period and having a certain carryover period, crossover period between the two of us. And so primarily with those things going forward, I'd say the primary basis for those amounts. The new electronic system will cost about $30,000 or $40,000 to install. Right at the moment, the outside counsel is looking to be around 40. There are two cases, one around 20,000 and one has just been recently increased up to around $50,000. And then bringing in someone at my level is going to have certain expenses with it, although I don't anticipate it being the entire time during the commission's biennial budget.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So your current staffing is 2?
Chairman Stewart, Representative Sims, I apologize for not doing that before. Myself, I have one full-time assistant and one part-time assistant that works with me.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So your intent is to bring the additional person on in 2027?
Probably late in this, excuse me, Chairman Stewart, Representative Sims, late in this fiscal year and early on into the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Davila.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Richter, good to see you this morning. Statistically, I'm interested in some more granular information than you have in your testimony. How many cases go to a probable cause finding, and then how many get to a final determination in an average election cycle, let's say?
We, through a particular year, we get approximately 500 to 700 cases filed with us by the boards of elections, and over the last couple of years, about 50 or so by the Secretary of State's office. And anymore, we don't really use the probable cause panel system anymore. That was primarily in place when the commission was dealing with false statement cases, and that statute was declared unconstitutional in 2014.
The probable cause panel is what they should be using when a complaint comes in. They're supposed to do a probable cause check, and either they can dismiss it at that time, or it's a question of, is there probable cause to move forward? Instead, they have substituted this thing they invented called a preliminary review that I think is contrary to law the way they do it. But it actually, they use that preliminary review process to basically adjudicate most of the cases without having to have any hearings at all or allowing any real testimony.
But the preliminary review stage is where we start the process. Generally speaking, we were able to deal with most cases there. And I'd say in a particular year, it's hard to say specifically from year to year and lining up the years because there are some cases in 2024 that we've already carried over into this year. But I'd say we're probably dealing with 70 to 75 to 80% of the cases in a particular period by the time you get through the preliminary review. And, for those cases, there are some cases that get sent along to hearing, and those obviously take a little more time for the commission to deal with.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative White.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. Thank you, Director. I guess I wanted to ask from your position, I know that there is federal case law and all kinds of rulings that have come down related to what many in the General Assembly and other elected offices have experienced, which is outright lying about themselves during the campaign by their opponents. And it seems to me that the role of the Elections Commission in being
The king of lying is Larry Householder. So let's be real clear here. The number one purveyor of lies is establishment politicians against grassroots people, not the reverse. It's always the smears typically against grassroots candidates by establishment people. But let's keep going. They're very into this false statements. They really want to have a ministry of truth because they want to control what people can say. They don't want that. You're going to hear almost no questions about actual campaign finance abuses because they want that. They love campaign finance abuses. This is what the insider class or the uniparty class loves, is to be able to have special campaign finance assistance that is never reported.
Able to take action is in essence hampered because of some federal and court rulings. But is there anything we can do as a legislature to protect against false lies, other things that happen during campaigns? Because it's getting increasingly difficult with AI and all kinds of technology to help voters discern truth.
Chairman Stewart, Representative White.
You have a sitting politician saying they want to help voters discern truth. That would be a new experience that I have never seen before. A sitting politician wanting to help voters discern truth.
I feel like I believe that the commission dealt with some of those issues when it had the ability to deal with false statement cases. But once the statute was declared unconstitutional, the commission hasn't had an opportunity to act on those kind of circumstances and those kind of cases. Shortly after the decision was handed down in 2014 that declared the statute unconstitutional, I worked with a couple of attorneys who regularly work with the commission on both the Democratic and Republican side, and it.
So, just for reference, the attorneys he's probably talking about are Don McTeague and Don Bray. There are two attorneys that are basically insider attorneys. McTeague is a Democrat, and Don Bray is a Republican. And so they basically have capture of the OEC on a lot of things, and Richter does what those attorneys tell him to do. Later, I don't know that I'll be doing it for long because he's fairly old, but Ron O'Brien has been doing that. Don Bray got totally humiliated in the Freeman case and is generally seen as an unethical guy by a lot of people. So, but there's an insider class of a few attorneys that basically have huge sway over the election commission, and they make a lot of money off of defending, when necessary, insider candidates.
Was our respective belief that there was a way of reenacting a statute that could be enforceable primarily by taking out any kind of criminal penalties, but allowing the commission to go forward. But it's been talked about, but nothing has ever been moved forward into or through the General Assembly as it relates to that. You're certainly welcome to call me biased about it, but when I dealt with the commission on those kind of matters on a regular basis, I felt like the commission was very effective in trying to deal with those kind of circumstances. Unfortunately, beyond our control, the statute was declared unconstitutional. We haven't been able to act on those since. I'd love to work with anybody who was willing to try and bring something like that back to the General Assembly. I've maintained from all those years ago all the various things that the attorneys and I talked about in terms of the possibility of bringing back a statute that could be enforceable.
Follow up. Representative.
So one of the people that was found guilty when they were enforcing the false statement claim was none other than Jean Schmidt. And it would give you an example of the kind of false statement she was making, was claiming to have university degrees that she did not have. And I can see where that's a black and white false statement. But if you go look at Larry Householder mail pieces about people being criminals or people doing this or that, you see the kind of false statements that happen now. But Jean Schmidt was one of the abusers of false statements in her ascendancy into politics.
Ray.
It really depends on the circumstance. Chairman Stewart, Representative Way. It depends on the circumstances of how many are asked. And over the last couple of years, it's only been one, maybe two in a year. I think 1 year and about 2 or 3 years ago, we had 4. When there's been a major change,
I think the question was about advisory
as it was in
opinions,
1995. and back in, I think it was 1987. In the years after that, the commission, I think, approved 12 or 13 advisory opinions. And so that's the normal circumstance. I have yours. I'm working on it. And so I'm hopeful of getting it out, not by the end of February, but I think we have 2 meetings in March, but trying to get it out in March.
Follow up. Thank you, Director. We ran into this when I was a county commissioner. You'd have a department head who came in and said, well, I'm going to retire sometime this year and I'd like some more money in the budget to train my replacement. And then we'd ask, well, when are you going to retire? And they say, well, we'll see. And then it became the next year and the next year and the next year. I mean, before we would approve more money to train your replacement, how long do you anticipate you need that period to be?
If it was up to my wife, I would be doing it probably by the end of this year, but sometime early next year is when it will happen.
Okay. Rep. Schmidt hit on it, and I'm going to try not to talk about specific cases, but I'm aware of a committee that is heading into year 4 of a hearing filed by somebody who lives 100.
It's his committee, and I guess he also doesn't like that the feds went after Larry Householder, because if you don't live in the same district, you shouldn't be able to go after somebody for being a crook. Brian Stewart is a crook. So he's little man. He's in the position he is, I think, now because he's controllable. And so he's not talking about the particular case, but it's his case he's talking about. And so just take it with a grain of salt.
Miles away, who's never been a constituent. I've talked to a lot of practitioners who have appeared before the Ohio Elections Commission. I think the impression is pretty uniform. The rules say you're supposed to follow the Ohio Rules of Evidence. The commission does not. It says you're supposed to apply the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure. The commission does not. We have hearings that are dragging on years and years and years, costing people tens of thousands of dollars for civil violations with a $50 fine.
He's just completely full of shit. His hearings, so there was a hearing for his, and a lot of it's because he's not available. He has another lawyer involved and they're not available. So they don't have enough meetings. That's a fair statement. But they had I believe the first hearing for him, we're about ready to have the third one, was August of 2024. There was then one in November of 2024, and hopefully the last one will be in February of 2025. That's not 4 years, Brian. So he has a little trouble with math. And a lot of the times what Richter said was they were waiting for the Freeman stuff to go through the court system. But I tell you, we can go look at the calendar. I'd be glad to go through with Brian Stewart. Every time there has been a request to schedule something, how often I say I can't do it versus he can't do it, or his co-counsel person can't do it. So if he's concerned about this, why doesn't he try to address how there's more capacity in the Ohio Election Commission? It's really like a Trojan horse. These guys don't want there to be any campaign finance integrity in Ohio. Brian Stewart wants to be able to go under the radar or to push stuff to a local community where he can control people like judges or board of elections, in my view. So let's keep rolling.
We looked back at the roster of the commission's meetings for the last 2024. There were 18 meetings, and 10 of them had a missing commissioner. And so part of the problem is we can't get a full commission to actually show up and do the job enough to get these cases processed in a timely amount of time. Do you really believe that this commission today, when you have cases dragging on years and years and years, no prosecution of former Speaker Householder?
This guy's like a liberal Democrat.
Is this commission really working the way that we
with
intended?
all these issues?
Chairman Stewart,
just
fair
take them on
questions,
faith.
don't get me
All
wrong.
these issues he said
but I feel
happen.
like the commission does a reasonably good job of moving things forward. Unfortunately, I appreciate that you're how do I want to phrase it? You're not convinced as it relates to my decision as it relates to holding matters because of the decision in the Freeman case.
Well, it's not, Director, I'm sorry. It's not just holding matters. We can't get things scheduled in your commission.
It's because of you,
Well,
dumbass.
the parties are already going March. Well, but we got 2 commissioners that have a hair appointment or have to, go to
Hair appointment. Let's
something
just
else.
demean people.
There's no communication to the litigants.
This
You'll come
guy
down,
is such a
you get
little
notice
man.
We started hearing at 10. You don't get started till noon. And then unbeknownst to the parties, attorneys who've been called in to do these cases for the entire day, well, we got a hard stop at 2:30. Nobody told the litigants. Nobody told the attorneys who are involved in the case. We are wasting people's time. I sit there for 2 hours watching people get hauled in from Cleveland, judges hauled in from Cincinnati to, flagellate themselves over being a day late on a finance report for a $20 fine.
This guy is a complete fraud. So Now he doesn't even know that now people can appear virtually, so you could appear via Zoom. Brian, if you want to do your hearings via Zoom, you can do them by Zoom now. So he's it's all this like presumptive, like a libtard stuff about how, all these horrible things. I will give you, if anything, if these guys want to fix it, what they need is more capacity on the Ohio Election Commission to be able to have a hearing, and they actually need more money to go after campaign finance abuse, and to change the demeanor from being a protect the insiders. What Brian doesn't get is most of his peer politicians like the things to drag out forever, because then everybody like literally forgets everything or dies before it ever gets adjudicated. I push to get things adjudicated. So as I said, I filed 2 mandamus actions to get things scheduled for the election commission. Has Brian Stewart done that? If Brian Stewart is being a lawyer is so upset about his stuff not happening in a timely enough fashion for him, why didn't he file a mandamus action to get things moving forward? He doesn't, because it's all pound the table stuff. And we're going to see later when I show his tweet the overt threat to the commission that because he's got a hearing before him on being a crook that knowingly accepted corporate contributions.
$5 fine. We've gotten rid of the false claims statute. Why not just send all these cases to court where they can be dealt with by a judge who knows the law? And if people feel this strongly about their case, let them bring it themselves. What would be wrong with that approach?
Well, I mean, I've often thought of that, Chair Stewart. I've often thought of that. And, if there was no commission, then you're essentially putting the matters back into the respective counties, and then you have essentially 88 different interpretations potentially on the law and 88 different applications across all the various county prosecutors.
If we have 88 different interpretations of Ohio Revised Code as it is, what makes election law so special?
Then, Brian, what makes property tax law so special? Why don't you get rid of all the boards and commissions that are quasi-judicial on certain subject areas that exist today in Ohio? This guy is so full of shit. There are all kind of quasi-judicial functions because you need certain hearing capabilities that have experience with certain situations. And then the backstop is somebody can take it to court after that. But Brian doesn't want to admit that. Why don't you cut the budgets for all that, Brian? Why don't you make everything go through local county courts and get rid of all quasi-judicial functions in Columbus and clear out a lot of the office buildings there? It's such disingenuous nonsense that he's talking.
That we can't have it dealt with at a local level.
I met with, and not to say that they wouldn't necessarily take it on, but I met with County Prosecutors Association, as it relates to the commissions sending them certain things along. And let's just say they were a bit reluctant to deal with the commission sending them matters that primarily involved collections, I guess, as much as anything.
If our county prosecutors have made a determination that it's not a good use of taxpayer time to have months and years long hearings about a $25 fine and whether you put the right disclaimer on your lit piece, doesn't that suggest maybe it's not worth the commission?
This guy is so full of shit. The $25 fine. Alan Freeman's a $50,000 fine. Blythe had to pay like $130,000. The Larry Householder's in jail. This guy, after a $61 million bribe scheme in which he was a participant, a recipient of the benefits of that, Brian Stewart's campaign, he is sitting here and saying, this is about $25 fines for not filing your report on time. He is such a fraud. He is such a fraud, and he is such a little man. You go talk to him, you get that real quick. He thinks he's the center of the universe. He's super little man. I'm sure he's super controllable by higher ups that pat him on the head as well.
Time either.
Well, Chair Stewart, with all due respect, I mean, I certainly appreciate Representative Schmidt's case, your case, et cetera, that have taken as long as they have. Certainly isn't something I'm proud of or that I would like to see. And I'd say, generally speaking, those are the rare incursions as it relates to the commission.
They are the rare
The greatest
occurrences.
majority of matters, especially when you're dealing with something of 1 day, 2 days late, 6 months late, whatever it is, those kind of matters are dealt with. We send out notice and they're dealt with almost immediately. There are matters that get sent over to hearing, and the hearings have to go down, are set off down the line and take some more time. But I feel like the commission deals with most matters on a fairly prompt basis, makes educated decisions, and tries to make consistent decisions so that there is a consistent application across the entire state of Ohio.
Representative Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony, Director Richter. Personally, I'd have to say that all my experiences with your commission have been pleasant ones. Been in front of you twice as a plaintiff, not as a defendant, and successful twice in false statement cases, which obviously the courts have said you cannot follow up on that. But I think in follow up with Representative White's question, I mean, if you have met with some legal folks and you feel there's a way that legislatively we could put Humpty Dumpty back together again and somehow have some mechanism to police this stuff, because between Citizens United,
You would think a
decision
Democrat
and
would
that court
bring up the
decision
$61 million household or bribe scheme as being a reason why we need to have a better election commission, but they're on the same uniparty stuff, false statement claims.
I'll round up some here and, to follow up and see what we can do legislatively.
They all want to have a
to bring
ministry of
back
truth
those,
created.
false statement cases. So thank you for that. The only question I have is, I know in a lot of cases, those things, when you did have the false statements, would then be referred back to the county prosecutors. What was the history of the record of that? Were the county prosecutors serious about, because I know, I had one that went on for like about 7 years before I finally got a call from the county prosecutor say, what do you want to do with this? So I guess how cooperative have the local officials been over the years in following through with things that are recommended or findings by the Ohio Elections Commission?
Chair Stewart, Representative Troy. I think over the years, the commission referred, I think it was approximately 10 matters for prosecution. Generally speaking, it was something that the commission dealt with its own by issuing a letter of reprimand, as the commission was able to do through its rules. It was really a mixed bag. I know that we had a case involving Central Ohio that involved the group that was challenging when Polaris Mall was being built, where the commission made a finding. It was referred for prosecution, and the prosecutor, I believe, got a maximum fine amount out of the organization that made those statements. We also had a case, though, where we made a finding, we sent it along to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor sent us a letter back saying, I'm not going to prosecute this matter. It was really at the once we send it along, it's at the discretion of the prosecutor, and we're really kind of out of the loop. So I think it's fair to say it was a mixed bag when we had those circumstances.
Representative Glassburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Director, I co-sign Representative White's and Troy's desire to see a reinstatement of those principles regarding truth in elections. But a couple other. I'm also concerned about the mentioning of specific cases here. I know that some of the representatives have specifically brought up their own cases, but I am uncomfortable and find it inappropriate for you to be proactively talking about individuals' cases here. But my question is to staffing. You mentioned your retirement. You want to bring someone on. It's not clear to me as to whether your staffing increase is a permanent staffing increase of an additional position or not. Is it?
It would be, excuse me, primarily it would be a person to replace me. And so, at one point, I guess you'd say that would be a temporary person to work with me for a period of time. Then I would leave, and that person would take my position.
Follow up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the General Assembly doesn't want to approve that transition, how much of an increase in the personnel line is needed for inflationary increases, and how much is having the third person?
Chair Stewart, Representative Glassburn. Well, I was looking at getting someone near my current salary as the replacement for me, and then having a carryover period of time before that person then took over. And so I'd say the majority of those funds, I believe, will cover that period of time when there's carryover between the two of us, as well as dealing with any kind of inflationary expectations on the other salaries. The commission member salaries have been set at $25,000 since the commission was created. That's not going to change. And then the other, like I said, I have one staff member, one full-time, one part-time staff member. So I think that those amounts will deal with the commission through the period of time between when there's a mutuality between us and then on into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. I think I hear multiple members of this committee expressing concern over an additional $260,000 for a department that has you plus 2 staff members, and I think it's been repeated multiple times. I'm trying to understand. I apologize. I think you've answered around this a little bit, but that additional $260,000 or $63,000, that's for outside legal counsel and to help replace you. Is there something else we're missing here?
Excuse me, Chairman Stewart, Representative Byrd. We're also going to be, I anticipate installing a new electronic filing system that will cost, at least when we got a proposal for it, somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000, and then there'll be, it's like $1,500 a month maintenance fee on into the future. So there's that as well. And when you refer to $260,000, I think right at the moment the commission's budget is approximately $630, something like that. And what we're talking about here is 210, or I'm sorry, excuse me, 810,000. So it's about $180,000, of which, you know, again, approximately 70 to 80 will deal with either the imposition of the new system and legal fees, and then the remainder is for replacement and other personnel costs.
Follow up?
Yep.
Page 279 of the Blue Book, I'm looking at it, and under line 500, personal services. I'm assuming that's human resources. It's going from 572,000
I do appreciate
to
that Adam Byrd is actually asking
835,000,
questions about
which
the
is
budget, not about
over like a
their
40%
cases
change
or
over
about,
2 years. So that's
the
where I was
false-
getting those numbers.
false,
And so,
statements,
you know,
statutes.
I mean,
So I appreciate that he's
I just-
asking
I think
questions
that's where
about
the
what the
questions from the
intent of the
committee are
hearing
coming
is
from,
supposed
just
to be about
concerned
the
that a
budget
department of
for
3
the
people
next biennial budget.
has such a large personal services salary and benefits cost. Thank you, sir.
Rep Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Richter, good to see you. I came in late, and I don't know if you touched on this or not, but in the majority of your 23,000 cases that you referenced, how many were based upon someone not closing their school board campaign account, and they forgot to file an ethics statement or something, not ethics, but forgot to close it? They get the letter, they have to go through all this, and how many would you say of that?
Judge Stewart, Representative Young, it's hard to put a specific number on it, obviously, but I'd say that's probably something that consistently occurs, maybe 7,000 of those.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's certainly something that regularly occurs. We regularly see people that, especially at the local level, and we try to deal with them appropriately, who will file the waiver and not realize that they have, you know, they've opened a campaign committee and that they have to do something to terminate that committee later on. We see those kind of circumstances on a regular, I'd say on a fairly regular basis.
Follow up, please.
Yes.
So hopefully your new system will be able to alleviate a lot of those situations because they're usually minor. They keep open. Like one guy told me $7, you know, but they forgot to close that out.
Let me give you an example of one of these minor things. So I had, I think, 3 cases against the ORP who had not filed its financial reports timely, specifically to hide monies that were transferred to Mike DeWine. So sometimes, you know, there's a lot of the cases that should be adjudicated in probably a different way, or there should be more discretion exercised at the local board of election. But there are cases that look like these minor things, like somebody didn't file a report, that in reality are things like the ORP not filing reports timely to hide transfers of money that were happening to Mike DeWine. If anybody remembers back to that period when Mike DeWine was getting money transfers to him before being endorsed by the ORP.
So if that's 5 or 10,000, the other question is, when you do see cases, are the majority of those cases gone against entities that do not file an ethics form?
Chair Stewart, Representative Young. Well, you mentioned an ethics form. It's not an ethics form. Yeah, I mean, it's some sort of report that required to be filed with
the
Board of
Ethics
Elections.
Commission is 100 times more useless than the
I know
OEC.
there are some boards that do, I think, a reasonable job of trying to reach out to those persons that work with them to help them understand what they need to file and how they need to file it. That's harder for us to do because we're dealing with things on a statewide basis. But I'm regularly on the phone with persons calling in, asking questions about the filing obligations. And I do my best to try and educate them on what they need to do as it relates to, you know, pre-election, post-election, semi-annual, annual, whatever the case may be, to get those filings made. And then, like I said, I feel like over the years, I've established a consistency and approach toward those kind of cases so that you try and deal equitably with people that just haven't closed out their committee. But it is something that just happens because people don't necessarily pay attention, and they don't necessarily understand all the intricacies sometimes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Representative John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here. So in your testimony, you have down 10 commission members comprised of 3 regular Democrats, 3 regular Republicans, 1 independent, and alternate. So there's 3 alternates, and you have them listed as on the payroll. So commission members are being paid, correct?
Chair Stewart, Representative John, yes. Commission members by statute get, the regular commission members get $25,000 a year plus expenses as their pay. The alternates get $150 per day when they attend a meeting.
$25,000 a year. The chair mentioned that there were 18 commission meetings last year, and of the 18, there were 10 where commission members were not present, which I believe has contributed to cases being held up. Yet there's 3 alternates.
It really hasn't, by the way.
So we have commission members being paid, we have 3 alternates, and more than 50% of the meetings that were held during last year had commission members absent.
How much? What
Can you
percentage
explain
of the
to me why
legislature
commission
sessions
members
had
wouldn't-
reps absent?
I don't know, put it on their calendar and do their utmost to attend?
Chair Stewart, Representative John, I wish I had a great answer for that. Circumstances arise. There have been, I know there were at least a couple of circumstances where commission members got sick in the days leading up to the meeting. So I mean, those kind of circumstances arise. I believe that and we try to put our schedule out well in advance so that everybody can have it in advance to make sure that they can attend those meetings. We do our best to do that, but I can't really speak for all the commission members as to why those occurred. I just have to deal with it when they do.
Follow up.
Just a statement, maybe we need to do a better job of getting commission members that are committed to showing up at all of the meetings.
So whose fault is that? The legislature recommends the members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for coming in. There was a case back in around 2008 dealing with All Children Matter. And I remember it being a case where they did some illegal things and they were fined, I think close to $4 or $5 million. I guess my question is, had that ever been received? And if not, what happens to that? Does that just go away, or what occurs?
Chair Stewart, Representative Hoops, one of my favorite things to talk about, obviously. It was, the commission made the decision that it did, that you're right, it imposed a substantial fine. Eventually, we sent the matter along to the Attorney General's office for collection. By the time it got that far, the groups that were involved in that had already essentially used up all of their funds, and so there wasn't anything there to really claim. And so, with all due respect, Mr. Attorney General, I'm not trying to throw any kind of shade at the Attorney General's office. They did the best they could, but the groups that were involved in that essentially went out of business. We tried to go after the Attorney General's office, did try to go after the treasurer. The court system struck that down. Don't ask me why, because it's been too long since I've dealt with that situation. And so that sits out there as a noose around the Elections Commission's neck, primarily because nothing was ever able to be done to collect that full amount.
Thank you.
Other questions from members? One final one from Rep. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir. Knowing that you have to schedule meetings, and you might think that you can hear 2 cases in a day, and then the one case
They
bleeds
never
over
try
into
to
the
have 2 cases in
afternoon.
a day.
And then the next person is sitting there paying their attorney an hourly wage, seeing this accumulate, and sometimes they don't even get heard.
This is nonsense. This is
I'm
complete
posing
nonsense.
this to you because it doesn't happen just once. It happens on multiple occasions. Or
No, it
somebody,
doesn't.
one of the members has a hard stop because they want to go see their kid play a basketball game. That has happened, or was it a baseball game? I can't remember.
I thought it was
That
a
has
hair
happened.
appointment.
What can you do? What kind of best practices can we help you with to make sure that people are not unduly financially hit when they have to go before you because the commissioners themselves want to do something else besides
One thing you will never hear Gene Schmidt say is, how can we help you to be a better watchdog on campaign finance in the state of Ohio? Because Gene Schmidt doesn't want a watchdog on campaign finance in the state of Ohio. She's worried. Her thing is, how I had to pay a bunch of legal fees because I had to have an attorney sit around or something, because I stretched out the case and couldn't, for example, do 2 days in a row, et cetera. And that's what I'm upset about. She's not upset about the $61 million bribe scheme of which she was a benefactor. She's upset about that the politicians in Ohio, if they are ever to be held accountable, might have to get a lawyer, okay? And they might have to do something with that lawyer, and it might cost them money. It is such bullshit. And Gene Schmidt will never, none of these people will ever speak up. Wouldn't you love to hear one of them say, what can we do to help you to be a better watchdog on campaign finance corruption in Ohio after the Larry Householder corruption? None of them say that, Democrats or Republicans, because they all benefit from that type of corruption.
Hearing cases and having cases bleed over the scheduling, do you see any way that you can make it more efficient, and that once they're there, they have to be there until everybody is heard?
Chair Stewart, Representative Smith, I will, certainly there have been a lot of concerns expressed during this process here that I will bring back to all my commission members and let them know what the nature of the conversation, what the nature of the discussion was here in order to make sure they are aware of the obligation that they have to attend and complete meetings. And I promise that I will do that to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Director. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Commission members, we're hearing from the Elections Commission at the beginning of the day in full finance because I'm going to take my own medicine. I don't want to hide any balls about what we're trying to do here. There's a lot of concerns been expressed. I have grave concerns about the ability of this commission to continue to have hearings.
You do, because you are a crook and you want to threaten them because you accepted corporate contributions knowingly that were never reported through the Larry Householder scheme. It is so disingenuous that little man Brian Stewart is sitting here like a pompous ass when he is on the line and he just can't be honest. You know what's true about all these politicians? When they do something that's wrong and unethical, like campaign, they never admit it. They never admit it. To this day, Alan Freeman acts like, oh, I never knew anything about 300 grand worth of 188 grand worth of TV commercials that ran for me because I didn't have a TV antenna or something. So let's let this play out.
I think, doing these preliminary reviews may be one thing, but this process, in my view, is substantially broken. And I think
your process, campaign finance, is what's broken, you little dipshit.
I'm getting texts and calls here from other members saying this is the time to make some reforms. And I hope we do that as part of this process. Our next witness.
So here's another thing. The budget in Ohio process gets completely abused for all sorts of things totally unrelated to the budget. Like they changed the baby box rules in the last budget. So what he's saying is our budget in Ohio is totally corrupted. What they do is they make all kind of legislative changes as part of the budget, buried in the budget. So they slip it through. They legally, the Supreme Court should have slapped this down, the nonsense down. We're supposed to have single subject legislation. But what little Napoleon here is saying is he's going to try to figure out a way to castrate the election commission because he's hacked, because he's this close. He wants to get threaten and bully them because he clearly was a benefactor to the Larry Householder bribe scheme. And he's mad because they didn't just not let him have a hearing. You can go watch on my YouTube page when he got told when there was the preliminary review that resulted in a hearing being scheduled. Watching his facial expression is unbelievable because it's like, what? I'm not supposed to be ever held over for a hearing. I'm an important person. We're not supposed to have to deal with this.
Is going to be, I believe, Attorney General Dave Yost.
So I'm going to keep playing this because Dave Yost, who is also part of this, and I'll tell you how.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman
Stewart. Is going to make comments about the election commission.
Member Sweeney, members of the House Finance Committee.
This guy's as slimy as they come.
Having just sat through the last 45 minutes, I'm going to take 30 seconds of personal privilege and observe
Slime
that
ball.
in my long experience and since the 2014 Supreme Court decision,
And his long experience, because I don't think the guy's ever had a job outside of sucking the tit of the taxpayer.
the Ohio Elections Commission has outlived its usefulness, and that those functions could easily be devolved upon the local boards of education where people would not.
No, it's not boards of education, dipshit. It would be boards of election, and it would never work because you're saying boards of election would have all these hearings. Makes no sense. And I'm gonna tell you about how this guy's connected with all the crookery in campaign finance in Ohio when he gets done yapping.
Have to travel to the capital city for a determination of.
You don't have to travel to capital city, dipshit. You can do it by Zoom now or by Teams. I use Microsoft Teams.
What are essentially minor matters that are left to the commission's discretion.
So I don't think, contrary to Dave Yost, I don't believe that Larry Householder finance corruption is a minor matter. Okay. He does. And why might he have a view like he does? So the CPA firm that handled most of the Larry Householder crook candidates was Winterset CPAs. Guess who they are? Or unless it's changed, it might have changed in the last. But at the time that stuff was going on, they were also the treasurer for ding, 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 Dave Yost. Dave Yost. So you have to understand a big part of why you never see any grassroots candidates be successful in Ohio is there is a crooked campaign finance system. The Ohio Election Commission is really part of it. So because they mostly protect these guys, but when somebody like me brings a case and adjudicates it, I've done more to cause them have a heartburn because I actually bring cases that would never get brought and I don't get worn out. Another thing they fail to mention is a lot of this stretching out stuff, they assume if a citizen brings a case that they're not going to have the skills to adjudicate it, but also if they stretch it out, they're going to wear out the citizen. I probably, just on Alan Freeman, had to go to Columbus probably 10 times. Most of that was because of Alan Freeman and his counsel, Don Bray, doing constant motions, having to have motion hearings and so on and so forth in the process. So, any event, I put that video without me yapping also out on YouTube, on my YouTube, and I put a link with this video. But I wanted to give a version of it with some commentary as to what's actually happening here and what's going on. The next Brian Stewart hearing is on February 27th, Thursday, February 27th. And I've said a couple of times I'm going to show a tweet that Mr. Stewart put out. And let's look at that. So when Mark Paquita brought it to the attention of me, really, because I saw it from him doing it, that this hearing had taken place, Mark Paquita went into the corruption involved with Brian Stewart and this Larry Householder stuff that apparently none of our politicos in Ohio care about. You know, it's so funny. Larry Householder and a few other people were guilty and the feds had to do them, but everybody below that, no problem. Nothing. There was nobody else that was crooked in the whole operation. So let's look at what Brian Stewart, this is a response to Mark Paquita. And it says, I wouldn't wish the Ohio Election Commission circus. So circus, remember, they're going to hairdressers. I mean, so demeaning. Hairdressers, baseball games. It's a circus. On my worst enemy in Doge. By the way, Doge. Okay, Brian Stewart's, by the way, a separate thing you need to look in. He's the one covering up stuff relating to Jobs Ohio and trying to keep that secret from. Brian Stewart is about as Elon Musk alike as Larry Householder is, okay? But it says, again, I wouldn't wish the Ohio Election Commission circus on my worst enemy, and Doge would eliminate it in a heartbeat. No, it wouldn't, dumbass. It's a $500K a year boondoggle. It's a boondoggle, okay? So campaign finance integrity in Ohio is a boondoggle that exists to give political appointees a $25K a year no-show job and drag conservatives. Okay, so I guess Democrats never get drugged before this, only conservatives, to Columbus for minor to non-existent infractions. Okay, let's get this down. Brian Stewart had a radio ad that he never reported, never ended up anywhere, where he was part of the voiceover in the radio ad. Alan Freeman did the same thing with TV commercials where he was in the TV commercials. These are the minor to non-existent infractions. It's odd to see you shilling for such a useless bit of government bureaucracy. I'll tell you what's a useless bit of government bureaucracy: Brian Stewart. Okay. So this is the kind of thing, and I look forward to his hearing on the 27th because I want to ask him about this, about the circus, about the hairdressers. And while he has a case before them, and he is an attorney. So I just think it's just clearly a threat to the commission. Frankly, he should be referred for prosecution for knowingly having received corporate campaign contributions. And he still to this day acts like head in the sand, and he's pissed off, and he doesn't like that there's somebody like me that doesn't just roll over, and I'm actually, you know, reasonably talented, so that I don't just, I let him fall into his own traps, which we'll see on Thursday that he's done it again, not in this and some other things, where his own the cover up's always worse than the crime, and we'll find that. But I don't know how it'll work out. I think that the Ohio Election Commission should be reformed to have way more teeth, to be a real watchdog, to have, I'd probably double the budget if it had the right people involved, and do something to clean up crooked insider campaign finance in Ohio. But the reality is that the insiders and the uniparty doesn't want it cleaned up. They benefit from the way campaign finance works. So when somebody like me brings cases about actually really pertinent stuff, like Larry householder corruption, they all lose their shit because I tenaciously move it forward through the Ohio Election Commission. And it just shows you what a little man petty guy this is, that this hearing, throughout it all, one thing you can know, look at his facial expressions. This is about him being upset about him having a case before the Ohio Election Commission. And then Jean Schmidt, who he claims to hate, is now his wingman because she's another one of the Larry householder candidate finance crooks. And they've both been before the Ohio Election Commission. Brian Stewart's still to play out, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if the threats work. Are the threats, or Brian Stewart's threats to the commission, going to work with the, what is he saying? Is, I'm going to pop it back up here again. His, if the 25 a year no-show job political appointees are going to succumb to the threats of little man Brian Stewart. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been informative. And again, if you don't want to just watch that video without me, I've posted that separately. Have a good rest of the evening.